All right, what's going on, YouTube? Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. Talking Auburn football. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, it's great to be on Auburn Tiger War Eagle doing another CarCast. Just want to casually talk about the Tigers today as Auburn gets ready to approach spring football training. A lot of moving parts, though. Auburn is getting a lot more aggressive with recruiting. Obviously, got a guy out of Auburn High School, which we will talk about a little later on. I think the main thing I wanted to talk about tonight, though, is what's going to separate Auburn and make them the type of team that can not only compete, but actually win SEC West championships, win SEC championships, and make a legitimate plight in the college football playoff. Well, for number one, something that Auburn hasn't seen, at least tangibly or from a result standpoint, is Auburn's got to get some really, really legitimate, genuine play calling, game planning efforts, especially in the big game. A lot of times, it's just the game plan is abandoned as soon as the 10 scripted plays in the beginning doesn't work. Game plan automatically abandoned. And that is something that Auburn has to get away from going into this season. And all evidence makes me believe that there will be some development happening with Bryan Harsin and between his staff. That they're going to legitimately study the tendencies of other teams and actually be prepared for these ball games versus, okay, the first 15 plays didn't work. We're just going to dump the whole game plan. That's something that Auburn can't do. If they want to make a legitimate, genuine effort towards being an elite team in college football that can stand up against LSU, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, teams in their conference and teams in the Power 5 that consider themselves elite, game plan and play calling has to be at the forefront on both sides of the football field. Because Auburn, even on defense, at times it just wasn't sound. I think of a time during the 2018 season, a lot of folks don't talk about it because there were a lot of other moving parts that were kind of bad on that football team as well. But, Kevin Steele had an epically bad run in the SEC that year, giving up over 20 first downs per game, 450 yards per game. It was just really bad. Surrendering 52 points to your rival Alabama that year, in a year that you started out with a win over Washington, and you arguably blew the game against LSU. And some of that was because of the lack of elitism, even on defense. You take Deshaun Davis, give him about 2 more inches in height, longer arms, and he deflects that pass that goes for a touchdown against LSU, and you got a different type of ball game. But either way, that's water under the bridge. The next thing I think Auburn absolutely has to do in order to be among the elite teams is they got to get better receiver play. They have to have a receiver that literally scares the hell out of the opposition. You talk about guys like Jamar Chase. You talk about guys like Devonta Smith, Henry Ruggs. Could potentially, a guy that could be this kind of potential is George Pickens. But the only thing about George Pickens is you can find him, though. He's like 6'3", but he's somewhat guardable. He's not someone that catches the ball in space and threatens you to where when he catches the ball, he's going to take it to the house. He's just not that kind of receiver. Now, do I think he's one of the better receivers in the SEC, talent-wise? Oh, yeah. I think so for sure. So that's another area. I think Auburn's got to get that guy. That guy that a defensive coordinator has to tailor their game plan around you, in addition to having a Tank Bigsby, having guys, tight end wise, having somewhat of a mobile quarterback, whether you pick Demarcus Davis or Bo Nix. I think Auburn's got to get to the point where they have an elite receiver, not a good receiver, not a little bit above average receiver. You got to get an elite receiver. And number 3, I think the last thing that's going to get Auburn to elite status is branding, of course. I think Auburn's got to do a little different with branding. I'm not going to go the whole, alternative uniform route, because that's usually a course of a whole different type of argument. But I think when you look at Auburn on the field, there needs to be an expectation of what you're going to see. And I'll use as an example. When you look at teams have been successful over the past few years, you see a common theme with those teams. You know what to expect from them. You know what their defense is going to look like. You know what their offense is going to look like. You know the type of players that they tend to recruit. You look at Clemson, Alabama, Oklahoma, Georgia, all those teams that have made appearances in the college football playoff over the last few years. You see you see a common thread as far as the types of players that they tend to recruit. Yeah, a lot of them are 5-star recruits, but if you look at the size, you look at the skill set, you look at their approach to the game, it's pretty much the same players, just different names, different, just different names. But Auburn, if you look at Auburn in the course of the Gus Malzahn era, for example, it's different every year. The concepts seem to be different. And another reason is you turn over position coaches. He turned over a lot of position coaches during his era, so he couldn't get to a point where he had a solid level of continuity as to the types of players that he recruited. So that takes away from the brand, because if you think about a good company, like say Apple, who does iPhone, for example, you know what to expect from the iPhone. You don't want to get an iPhone and then without you even touching a button, it just calls somebody, even though it does that shit sometimes though. But either way, you expect a certain kind of quality. And I think with Auburn, they've gotten away from that to where during the Tuberville era, you knew what to expect each week. You expected some hard-nosed football. You expected Auburn to run the ball. You expected them to play solid on defense. You expected them to play well against superior competition. That's what you expected. That's why during that period, Auburn started a trend to where they were the number 1 watched team on ESPN. Why? Because they had the flair of the dramatics, especially playing well against good football teams. It wasn't like the number 24 Auburn team under Tuberville, especially during the second year on to kind of sort of his last. Number 24 Auburn team playing against the number 5 Florida team. That number 24 Auburn team is going to show up. And it's going to show up and give Auburn the best opportunity possible to win. Those are the vibes I'm getting from Bryan Harsin. Now, will it happen? I don't know. I absolutely don't know. But I do know he's got a lot coming back. More than people may care to believe. To where this is one of those, we got to wait this one out. And really see what could potentially happen at Auburn in this situation. Getting off to a great start with coaching choices, with recruiting approaches. But those 3 things that I told you, those are some things that Auburn absolutely has to do, or at least start the trend of doing in order to be an elite team in college football. Skilled players got to be super elite. Defense has to play very well. Even though Alabama had one of the best offenses in the country, they were equally good on defense. Georgia was excellent on defense. We're going to see what Derek Mason's got. Okay, guys, that's my time here on the CarCast. Like the video, comment, and subscribe. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.